Hi, guys. Welcome to another episode of Coffin Conversations. I am Lauren, your host. Obviously, you know that if you're here by now. And today I have a super special guest. Her name is Natalee. She is, how her and I connected is over TikTok. And her life and what she has been through is honestly so moving. And if you, I don't even know how to give you an intro because your life is such a journey.
Right. It has been.
You'll pop up on my feed one thing and I'm like, oh my gosh, that girl, she has been through so much. And then another thing pops up and I'm like, oh my gosh, she did that too. And it's just like one after another after another. And when I found out that you really were almost like neighbors, and so I said, you need to come down here because I would love to meet you and have you on the pod and really have people know you. I don't know how you haven't written a book yet.
I get told all the time, you need to write a book. Or people will look at my story and be like, wow, I wasn't expecting that, the ending, and I'm like, I wasn't either. But, and I'm like, people are like, you need to have a movie or a book or something. I'm like, I don't know, it's just my life. I kind of just lived it. But once I started sharing it, it changed. I don't know, like it made me feel like I had a purpose in this life.
Yep. I'm waiting for the book. When the book comes out, you gotta let me know because it's gonna be a bestseller. So take me down this journey of TikTok. What was your first viral video that you posted about your life?
Right. So I think it was a trend. That's what I usually did on TikTok when I first started. I think I started in 2021. And I don't know, I would see videos and they would inspire me. Basically, I would say, oh, I could make that video, but with my own story and my own pictures. So I started doing that. And I think it was the one that was like, I could be brown, I could be blue, I could be
yes.
yellow. I think that was the first one.
Yep.
And I shared, about my sister and my husband at first. And then I started sharing about my dad's story too. His was more recent. But, at 18, just ever since I turned 18, Lauren, like my whole life, I was like, man, is this how life is supposed to be? Like, I lost my sister at 18 from a drug overdose. And, I will never forget the details of that night. That's something you never forget.
Yeah, tell me about that. Tell me about that.
It was early morning and
you were 18 too?
I was 18.
You were 18. How old was she?
My sister was 26 and my little brother, he was 16. And my little brother actually stayed the night with her that night. And I was at a friend's house and I got a call at like, I don't know, maybe 3 a.m. Why is it always in the middle of the night?
It's always.
I know. And I don't know why, but I got a call at like 3 a.m. and my mom was like crying on the phone and I couldn't understand anything that was coming out. So my dad took the phone and my dad is more blunt and he was just like, your sister's dead. And I was like, I asked him, I said, what? I said, what hospital is she at? That's my first thought because she's had many overdoses throughout my life. Like my childhood was chaotic and stuff because my sister had addiction problems and mental health problems. So it was very chaotic. So anyways, my dad was just, she's dead. And I said, what hospital? He goes, no, she's at her house. Come now, come quickly, And it didn't process that she had died. I was still thinking maybe it was just an overdose or the ambulance needs to come and take her to the hospital. I don't know what I was thinking. But I arrived to my sister's house and my brother was just sitting on the couch, like hugging this pillow, staring off into space. And my parents were crying. And she was upstairs and the cops wouldn't let us upstairs. And, they brought her down in the body bag. And I can picture it to this day. I mean, it's devastating. The body bag was blue and it had like black trim on it. And I remember they unzipped her head to her chest. And my mom and dad, I think that's what broke me. They just like flocked over her face and they were screaming and crying and they were like, my baby, and kissing all over her. And it was devastating. Well, after everything was said and done, I talked to my brother about that night and, he doesn't talk about it much. I'm more open in my whole family actually, but my brother doesn't talk about it much, but he says, he found her. She was on her knees with like her face in the carpet. I keep hitting the mic. And he woke her up and she had aspirated. So he dug all that out of her mouth And remember, he's 16 years old.
Yep.
He was a lifeguard at Slitterbahn at this time. And so he knew how to do CPR and all that. So he dug the stuff out of her mouth and started doing CPR, and it wasn't working. Well, my sister's fiance at the time had the idea to put her in a cold bathtub.
Oh.
I think they do that a lot for overdoses, like not medically, but people who are around overdoses. I think they try that a lot. They put them in cold bathtubs. And my sister and her fiance were addicts. So that's what they did. Didn't help. Brought her back out. My brother said, in my brother's words, he was like, Natalee, I was cranking on her, doing CPR.
For CPR.
And he said, I could hear her ribs snap and stuff. And he goes, but I didn't stop until the ambulance came. He said, he was like, I was out of breath. Like, I was sweating. And he said, he tried everything he could, and she just wasn't waking up. And
what was the time frame from when someone had seen her last to then him going in there? And
just a few hours.
Hours.
They went to bed that night, probably around 9. They had plans to go surfing the next morning at Galveston. Not that there's good waves there, but it's fun to swim, I guess. But so just a few hours. So in the middle of the night, he just found her. She had like a tuna fish sandwich that she had. That's what she had in her mouth. So that night really broke me. I remember her funeral. We didn't have her funeral until like 7 days later. I can't remember why. There was some issues. But we had to wait like 7 days.
It can take 7 days.
Can it? Okay.
Just with waiting on the autopsy, because she probably had an autopsy.
Yeah, she did.
And then with planning and getting people into town. And do you remember what day of the week it was?
Yeah, I think it was a Monday. I can't remember the exact day.
And then you got to plan. Did you have it at a church or was it at the funeral home?
Yeah, it was at a funeral home. And I remember walking up to the casket, and the 7 days, I didn't like the open casket with my sister. It was, I don't know, it just didn't look like her. She kind of had, like, her face was back like that, it just didn't really look like her. Oh, I keep hitting that. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I did that all the time too, because I talk all the time with my hands.
I do too. I gotta work on that.
I can tell now I'm getting more seasoned at it because I kind of keep them here now. And I also like.
I know. I keep hitting it. I'm like, I hope I'm not messing anything up. So I remember walking up to her casket, and when I saw her, like, my knees buckled, and I fell to the floor. And I remember I don't know who it was who tells the family, you can view them now and stuff. I guess it's the person.
It's the funeral director.
Well, she told me whenever I fell, she was like, you need to get up off the floor right now. And I was like, oh my gosh. I just remember her yelling at me about that.
Were you hanging on the casket or something?
No, I just was on the floor crying.
That bothers me.
I know, right?
I want to sit here and apologize. Like, oh, I'm so sorry.
It's okay. I've had other experiences.
Like, I could go back. Like, I just want to go back and like smack that lady upside the head.
I know. I couldn't even remember what she looked like or anything. I just remember her saying that and what it made me feel at that time,
That's what stuck with you. Mm-hmm. That what she said stuck with you.
Yeah, it did. I'll never forget that. That was just an odd thing to say.
Yeah, that is an odd thing to say. Who cares if you're on the floor? I've had people try to crawl in the casket. Like, then we got a problem.
Exactly.
You're on the ground.
I know.
That's.
So it was, So after my sister's death, it was hard on our family, of course. It was devastating because we were an extremely close family. We're a military family. My mom, my dad, my sister, my brother, me, we were all in the military. And so we moved. I was born in Puerto Rico. We moved to Hawaii.
Oh my gosh.
Texas.
Seriously. Yep. It's in the family. Wow. Okay. So what branch of just straight up the military for people that don't follow the military?
Right, the branches. My dad and my mom were both in the Army at first, and they met there. And then they branched off. My dad went to the Coast Guard, and he became a helicopter rescue swimmer. So he jumped out of helicopters for 16 years and saved people's lives.
Wow.
Amazing job. I'm so proud of him. And then my mom went to the Air National Guard, and she was a reservist. So, that's like only weekends, once a month.
Yep.
And she became a high school teacher for special needs and stuff like that, because that was really her dream. And then my sister joined the Air Force. And then my little brother, Coast Guard, also became a helicopter rescue swimmer. I know.
Does he do that now?
He is active duty now.
Oh my gosh.
As a helicopter rescue swimmer. And I'm like, how did you, I don't know. That's just crazy because that school is like over 80% failing rate. And for both of my dad and my brother to pass that school for the Coast Guard, I mean, that's unheard of. I think there's only like 2 father-son duos, Coast Guard rescue swimmers ever in the history of rescue swimmers.
Wow.
And like my brother and my dad are one of them.
That's so cool.
I know, it's really neat. I'm proud of them. But
That's really cool.
it's cool. So, and then I joined the Air Force like my sister and my mom did. So yeah, all military families. So we were extremely, extremely close growing up. Like we didn't visit grandma. We had to visit grandma and grandpa. We didn't have grandma and grandpa.
Live on base? Like
Yes, on base, things like that. And we were so far away, on the islands most of my life. So we only had cousins and uncles and aunts visit us once a year maybe, So it was just us 5. And after my sister's death, my dad, he also suffered some with mental health. It was mostly my dad and my sister. And they made a lot of my life chaotic, our life chaotic, my family's life chaotic. And I think that comes with mental health and addiction,
Well, and I mean, your dad was literally jumping out of airplanes too.
I always
and
said
the trauma. I mean, that has to take a really special person to do that, and you can't save everybody.
Exactly.
And then living with that and knowing that you did your best, but it wasn't enough. And for my job, I'm there at the end. I'm there when I'm needed, but it's not my job to save somebody. I would panic if I had to save. I have a really special place in my heart for people that do jobs like that because that takes a very special person.
It really does. I think about that a lot. Like knowing my dad and my brother, I'm like, it's fun. It's just crazy that they do that because you have to be a little mentally unstable to have a job like that.
To want to jump out the plane, to jump out the helicopter with the pull the chute.
You have to.
Have you ever jumped out of a plane?
No, I have not. But I mean,
is that on the bucket list? Or you're like, no, that's them.
I'm scared of heights, but I think I would do it.
I'm scared of heights too. I would not do that.
I think I would. I think I could.
I would not. I'll watch you do that. Your brother should just take you. Like your brother's like up in the. Like you think he'd get his buddies and be like, "Come on, Natalee."
I know he would too. If we were up in a plane together, he'd be like, "Oh, come on, you're doing it. Push,
push."
That's what he'd do. So, yeah. So after so anyways, mental health stuff, and it was chaotic. I ended up joining the Air Force, and after my sister passed, I wanted to go to college. I tried to go to college. She passed away in August, which is the same month I started college. So anyways, I never went to school, failed out of school. And my parents were like, you got to do something. So I joined the Air Force. My first duty station was Tokyo, Japan.
Oh, that's so cool.
I know, which was on my list. I wanted to go somewhere where I could have a fresh start.
Yep.
I had nothing holding me back at home.
And you were 18?
At that time, I was 20.
20.
So
you're still a baby.
Mm-hmm.
If you're 20, you're still a baby.
So 20 years old, and, I didn't fully grieve my sister's death. I think I kind of just pushed it.
Autopilot.
Yeah, autopilot. Perfect way to say it. And
it's harder to accept it.
Yeah.
I even find I'm still in denial.
Yep, I feel like I am too. I don't know if I'm in denial or if I've disassociated or something.
Disassociated from it.
I think that's what I have done. But so Japan, it was a great place to start off. I was really excited about my future. And I met a guy over there. His name was John King. And he was like, I remember seeing him in a Facebook picture at first. And I knew the guy that he was with. I was like, oh, who's that guy? Thinking to myself in my head. And I was like, oh, it's probably a friend from back home or something. Because he was the guy that I knew in the picture. He was in the military. I was like, probably a friend back home, whatever. Well, it wasn't. It was John, and he lived on base there, and he was in the Air Force, and he lived right there in a dorm next to me. So when I saw him in person, I was like, oh my gosh, that's the guy from the picture, and he is so cute, right? And he was tall and just my type all the way. And we fell madly in love immediately. I mean, it was like a whirlwind. And he took me to the top of Tokyo Tower, and he proposed to me, and it was beautiful. And we got married in November of 2011, and then I gave birth to our son in June of 2012.
Were you still in military and everything
So
in Tokyo?
by that time, after we got married in Japan, we moved to Andrews Air Force Base in Maryland, or I think it's called Joint Base Andrews now, but that's our presidential base. So like that's where Air Force One is at, Marine One. That's where they keep everything, you know. And my husband, John, he worked on the flight line, so he worked with Air Force One and stuff a lot. And I was a stay-at-home mom, and I had the baby. And, my mom came to visit us one day, and it was a Sunday. John worked on Sundays. And she was downstairs with the baby, and the baby was 8 months. My son, was 8 months old. And I was sleeping in, and we got a knock at the door, and it was my husband's first sergeant. She was in civilian clothes, you know, nothing, just knocking on our door. I thought John might have been in trouble, but she was like, I need to talk to his wife. So my mom came and got me, and she said, you know, John's been hurt, but it's not bad. He's on the way to the hospital. Like, everything's going to be okay. We're going to bring you there. I just got to find out some more information. And so I said, okay. And I was a little worried, but with the military, you know, you never know if he broke a wrist or, you know, cut his finger off, or, you know.
She comes to your door and says that he's injured, but that he's going to be okay, and he's on the way to the hospital. And I would have been like, all right, let's pack a bag, let's go.
And that's what I did, right? So I packed a bag, and she was like, okay, I got to wait from confirmation, all this stuff. She was on the phone a lot. Well, like an hour and a half went by, and she got a phone call eventually, and she took it outside. And I don't know, I think it was maybe 15, 20 minutes passed. And she was still outside after like 20 minutes. And so my mom and I look out the front window, and we see her, but this time she's wearing her dress blues. And then she's with the base commander in his dress blues. And then at the time I didn't know who the third person was, but now I know it was the chaplain in their dress blues. And they came to my door, and they were just like, sorry, this one's hard. This one's a hard one for me.
That's okay.
So
she changed, and it was the chaplain.
She changed. And they made their way through my house, and they kept telling me, sit down, sit down. And I was like, no, I want to know. But my mom, her being retired military, she saw them walking up, and she goes, oh my God, Natalee, no, God, Natalee, no. And I'll never forget that, because I was like, what, Mom? What is it? And she was like, oh God, Natalee, no. And she didn't say it. And
she didn't want to say it. She knew.
But she knew. And they sat me down, and they said John died. And, oh God, I was like my body was like physically sick. Like I started vomiting, like dry heaving vomiting. Like I had nothing to puke up, but my body was like, Lauren, immediately. Like the shock, I don't know, you know, it hit me like a ton of bricks. It was absolutely painful. It was like, it was absolutely painful. You know, grief is, God, I would rather die than to feel grief like that again.
It's like your body went into shock.
It was horrible. So,
did they tell you how it happened right away?
Yep. So he was in the hangar, and there was another airman that had asked him they had to move around some things in the hangar. And one of the things they had to move around was a vehicle, and it's called an Ambulift vehicle, and it's made especially for Air Force One. It's a lift vehicle that lifts like luggage and wheelchair, people up and down. And not a lot of people know how to drive that vehicle. there's not a lot of people that are trained on it because there's only two in the whole world. This is my understanding and what I was told from of this, what happened. So there's only two in the entire world, and our military has them for Air Force One. So there's not a lot of experienced drivers. And an airman, it's a stick vehicle, and every time you drive a GOV or a government vehicle, you have to have a spotter. So John was spotting, and the airman that was driving it, it died once. John came to the window, said, "Hey, man, you want to switch? I know how to drive it." He goes, No, I'll get it, So John went back to the back of the vehicle. I don't know if John was moving something or went behind it to move something, or the guy said his foot slipped and the vehicle jumped and it pinned John against a wall, and it hit him from about the sternum down.
Oh my gosh.
And it crushed him to death. And I talked to the guy that had did it on accident, of course. I talked to him like 9-10 years after, so kind of recently, maybe I think it was last year. And he of course is extremely remorseful, and he's had it rough. He's had a rough time these past few years. And he said the last thing he heard John say was "stop, stop."
Oh, no.
And then they heard a big bang against the wall. And that's when everybody came running over and they unpinned him. And he said that, John didn't say anything or anything like that. He just slid down the wall. His back slid down the wall and he fell to his knees. He kind of just stayed there. And that's what happened with him. They tried to revive him for 47 minutes, they said.
Wow.
So, and I didn't find out till hours later, I guess, which, kind of made me mad with the military, but I understand they're very secretive. And
That honestly, that would bother me too, because you would want to like rush there and be there, or
right.
And when you're in the military, especially when you're active duty, they own you.
Yeah.
They own you alive and they own you dead.
Yes, they do.
And family kind of comes second.
Yep.
I feel weird saying that, but
No,
it's
true.
it's
They
the
cover
truth.
their butts first. They have to.
Yep.
And even in the 50s, like people are asking me, like, why don't you sue or something? Well, in the 50s, they passed a law where you can't sue the military if you're
No.
so.
No, and
that's not
they
even
have
an
a
option.
they have a process. They have I'm pretty sure they have like their own police force and everything that comes
yeah.
and investigates.
It's like its own little city. It's like
Yes.
same different laws even.
Yeah.
We have to follow the UCMJ, the Uniform Code of Military Justice or whatever it's called. But it's different. Yeah.
They even have their own embalmers and yeah.
I knew they had I knew they had their own autopsy people. I didn't.
Yeah. Yeah. When we had a Marine who do active duty who had died, one of the only active duty funerals I've ever done, and they had their embalmer like on that did everything.
That's very interesting.
It was super interesting.
Very interesting.
And they had to have special people come and do the investigation, and so
That's what they did with John too.
and I wonder, did they transport John to the hospital right away, or did he pass away there? He was pronounced there.
I think he was pronounced at the hospital.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure because I was told from people that were there years later. They actually found me on TikTok and were like, "Oh my gosh,
Wow.
I
Oh my
I was
gosh.
there when your husband died." And yeah.
I was there when he died.
They told me some lady, one of the ladies told me that first of all he shouldn't have been unpinned. Second of all, they should have life flighted him right away, but they were so unprepared for that type of accident. Like she said, that base on Andrews was absolutely so unprepared for that type of accident. He should have been life flighted. He should have, a million other things. She said.
So that's why they said you should have sued, because
I guess so.
They should have done more.
Yeah, I guess so. That's why. Yeah.
Sooner.
It sucks, man. It sucks. And so then
And you're at home with an 8-month-old baby.
Yeah, yeah. And thank God my mom was there. My mom was due to leave that Monday, and he died that Sunday. And my mom had already been there for a week. Little did I know she'd be with me the next how many years,
Long time.
Long time.
I'm so glad you're close to her, and what a blessing that is that you have
such a
her.
blessing. I tell my mom that all the time. I'm like, Mom, do you know how blessed we are to like be able to have this relationship we have? And just, I don't know. I love my mom very much.
I feel that with mine. So I know it's such a blessing.
It really is. I feel for people that don't have a good relationship with their mom. I really do, because I feel so lucky to have it. So, so I was very blessed with my mom being there. I needed that support at that time. She took care of my baby, my son, for me. And her and my son are like this, because the next few years, she basically raised him because I fell into addiction.
So when you say you fell into it, can I be blunt and just ask you, like, what kind of addiction?
Yeah. So it started off with Xanax bars, benzodiazepines.
Pills?
Mm-hmm. Pills.
Because you definitely don't want to feel, you don't want to feel.
Right.
Right?
Right. I was numbing. I was trying to
Numbing
numb
the pain.
all that pain. Like at this time in my life, it felt so good to sleep. And every time I would wake up in the morning and my consciousness would intact or whatever, I don't know how to say, would come to. And I hated it. I hated my life. I wanted to die. I did not want to live anymore. I used to think to myself, like, how many more days am I going to have to wake up until I see John again? That's what I used to think. Like, I used to think, I just want to die so I could be with him.
Yeah.
And my sister, I used to be so.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
It was horrible.
So how many years after your sister died did your husband die?
So Nikki died in 2008 and John died in 2013.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So
5 years?
Yeah. Just about 5 years. And
so you still have this open wound, essentially, that hasn't healed from your sister. Right. And then now your husband tragically dies in an accident that never should have happened, where there should have been better or more stricter protocols. He should still be alive.
Absolutely. I had a whole future planned with him. It's one thing to have memories, like with my sister, I didn't have a future planned with her, but I have all our memories of 18 years together,
You might not have had a future together, but you, in your head,
right,
you knew that she had one, or you hoped,
absolutely,
or you thought, or one day, I don't mean to make you emotional, but to go to her wedding or to see her grow old, be your friend, and you lost her. Like,
especially now that I'm older, I think about her more and more. About her. Because I want that another female relationship like that, and it's just not the same. You can have sister-in-laws and stuff like that, but I don't know, it's just not the same. My big sister, she would have gone to war for me. Nobody would have had my back like she would have. And it just sucks to not have that anymore.
Yeah.
And then with John, we planned on we used to pillow talk and be like, what do you think John, my son JJ, or John James, is going to look like when he gets older? What are we going to do when he does this or that, when he's a teenager?
So is your son, his name is John too?
Yes.
Oh.
So it's a family name.
I love
John
that.
King III. So he's John James King III. He's actually like a sixth John King, though, because the middle names switch every other generation.
Oh my gosh.
It's confusing. But my husband is John Edward King II, and then my son is John James King III. So grandpa is John James King II.
Okay. I mean? Yes.
So if JJ, my son, has a kid, it would be John Edward III. My husband.
That's really sweet. Yeah.
So he's actually, there's a bunch of them. So I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool.
So you were pillow talking. I mean, he was so young too.
Yeah.
I mean, you were like newlyweds still.
Yes.
You had a baby. I mean, just you're so young.
I had so much to show him still. So much that I wanted to tell him, he was young too. He was young. Oh my gosh. I love that man. Still do. And I will forever. And my son looks just like him.
Does he?
Handsome though, and tall.
Do you have lots of pictures for him to look at?
Tons.
Do
I
you,
have tons.
do you talk to his family too?
I do.
Oh, good.
I'm close with my sister-in-law and my father-in-law. We, in the beginning, it was really hard. We had a falling out, I mean, grief does that to people.
Oh, grief. With the grief. I didn't know if that was while he was still alive.
No. It was after his death. I moved in with them.
Grief.
We were really close.
Grief does a lot. Oh, you moved in with them too? That's tough too. It's tough moving in with your in-laws.
I should have done things differently, but I didn't. And I didn't know, but
When you were going through it. They were going through it. You were going through it, and that's tough.
so it was hard, but we did have a falling out, but it had a lot to do with like me and the path that I took and my grieving process with the pills and stuff, because I was prescribed Xanax at the very beginning from the military doctors. 2 of them came to my bedside that day and prescribed me Xanax.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And I'll never forget that. And I was just blacked out the whole time at like John's memorial thing and his funeral. Like I can remember bits and pieces. Like, and I wasn't even abusing it yet. Not yet.
Wow.
Yeah, I was just taking it, the 2 milligram
That you were supposed
that
to.
I was supposed to take. And I was blacking out already, like bits and pieces of it. Yeah, I was like a zombie. So, oh gosh, anyways, it's a mess. So, yeah, so I started taking the Xanax, and it progressively got worse. So I moved to Florida in with my in-laws. We had a falling out. I went into my pill addiction, and I finally went to my parents one day. I had bought like $3,500 worth of Xanax bars, and I had them in a bag, and I went to my parents' house, and I was like, please, you guys got to help me. Like, I'm addicted to these. Here's all of my Xanax that I have. You have to put me on a taper or something.
Yes, to get you off. You knew you needed to come down from it.
But this was after, okay, so let me back up a little bit. So, because this was after a few years into my addiction. Like, I was abusing Xanax because my tolerance got higher. So in turn, you would have to take more to get the same effect. And so that's what I was doing. So I was taking probably 8 to 10 milligrams a day because my tolerance was so high. Like the 2 milligrams wouldn't put me on my ass no more. Like that would be nothing to me, right? So like I was taking a lot throughout the day. I got in a lot of trouble with the law. I got a DUI with a wreck, which was devastating. Thank God nobody was hurt.
Yeah, thank you.
Which that is a story all in itself, because the lady that I hit found me on Facebook recently and wrote me, and she showed me the day that I hit her. She shared a Facebook post about me, and she sent it to me in a message recently. And she was like, this girl just hit me, and you can tell she's under the influence, and I can tell her heart is breaking, and I don't know what's going on in her life, but I can just see, I prayed God over her, and just this whole thing she wrote the day that I hit her. And instead of being angry at me, she prayed for me. And
wow.
I know. It gave me chills.
Yeah.
I mean, that's amazing. Anyways, that's a story in itself.
And she found you on Facebook.
Through my videos on TikTok and stuff. Yeah.
The people you have reached.
I know, it's amazing.
Wow, that's amazing.
I couldn't believe it. And, she was so happy to see that I was doing good these days. And stuff,
that like melts my whole heart.
Me too. It makes me cry because, gosh, I felt, I thought about my DUI crash a lot, especially in my healing and in my recovery. I thought about that a lot. And I'm like, I don't even know what those people looked like. I know it was 2 people, but, I would think about it a lot. And then she reached out to me. It was just crazy.
I'm so glad that you were doing well now.
Right. And,
Wow.
so anyways, in my addiction, I got in a lot of trouble. I'm in and out of jails, in and out of institutions and rehabs. I don't know if I just wasn't ready or what it was. Nothing was helping. And I think it was more of like a depression, not just my addiction, but the addiction made the depression worse. Like the Xanax made it worse. So one time I was at a rehab, I actually met some people there that I became friends with, and their drug of choice was meth. And so I would hang out with them. And, when I was on Xanax, especially that time in my life, I think I was chasing death a lot. I was flirting with it. I don't know, however you want to say it. I don't know what I wanted to see, to be honest, but I started using with them, and we were injecting it.
Were you looking for something different because the Xanax just wasn't?
Yeah, I was just looking for something to make me feel happy or feel anything other than pain. I don't know.
Is meth the one where you do it the one time, the first time, and it feels really good, but then you do it every other time and it doesn't feel as good, and then that's how they overdose? Is that one?
No. I mean,
oh wait, that's heroin, isn't
I
it?
think that's heroin. But
Did you do that?
I have.
Oh my gosh.
That's another story. I was on Suboxone, which saved my life, because if I wasn't on Suboxone, heroin would have been my drug of choice. But I was already on Suboxone, which is an opioid blocker, so it wouldn't get me high.
Oh.
Yeah. So I was taking that already, and so it blocked the high, so I didn't really get to feel it. And I think if I didn't have if I wasn't taking Suboxone at that time, I probably would have fell in love with it. And
oh my gosh,
I know.
Girl.
I know. Trust me, I know. It's crazy.
I think somebody was looking out for you that you were on that.
I really think, I don't know why people are looking out for me, or I'm not dead yet, but there's got to be a reason, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's got to be. And I think that for everybody on this earth, there's a reason for everybody on this earth.
Yeah.
Like think about it, even bugs and stuff, insects, they have purpose in our ecosystem. And
Yep.
everyone has its little job that they do. So do we.
Making me think of Bug's Life with all the ants, and they all had their little jobs.
Exactly. Everybody on earth has a purpose just like that. And think about how big ours can be if a little bug can,
Climb a mountain.
right.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think that sometimes. But yeah. So anyways, so one day in my addiction, I was at rock bottom of my addiction. I was injecting methamphetamine. I would say was my rock bottom. I wasn't doing it myself. I was letting other people do it to me. So I wasn't at the point of doing it myself yet. I'm kind of scared of needles. So
Am I jumping ahead to where I saw this clip on TikTok of you that you posted, and was your mom driving and she was recording you?
Yeah, that was during
seat?
my addiction. Yeah, so she was driving me to court, and I was nodding the whole way, and she recorded me. She didn't know what to do. She was like, I was just going to let you go in there and let them take you to jail. So I know.
Did you go through with the court case when you got there?
Yeah, I did. I
Oh
went in
my
there.
gosh.
I don't remember it though. I think I went to jail that day though, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, I had to have. Who would?
Yeah.
What kind of judge would let me out
Really?
like that? That was ridiculous. I know. My poor mom. Oh my gosh. Her and I used to fight a lot, but now we're like this. We fought a lot because my addiction it took such a toll on my mom and my dad, really. So, okay, I was at rock bottom, and I got a message online one day, and it was from a guy named Justin, and
Justin's here.
yes, Justin's here. So it was from a guy.
What did Justin say?
I don't remember what was said, but we kind of chatted and flirted back and forth on Snapchat a little bit.
Back in the Snapchat days.
Yeah, I know. And so we just kind of flirted back and forth. And, I wasn't, at that time in my life, I wasn't looking for anything serious. I was just having fun.
That's always when it happens, when you're not looking for it.
Yes, it does. That is so true. So we end up meeting up for dinner one day. And this whole time that we met up, I was nodding out, just like that video in the car.
Oh, no.
I was like that the whole time, nodding out. And Justin, I'm sure he was embarrassed, and he took me home to my parents' house. And, my parents were like, basically like, this is nothing new. You can go home now, I guess. And Justin kind of was like, hey, I kind of want to intervene, see if I can help, get her better, not even, he didn't, I don't know if he said sober or what. He just said better. And he came over every single day. And he started my Xanax taper. That's when I had that $3,500 worth of Xanax.
Okay, that's how you know you got yourself a fucking keeper.
I
When
know.
he came over every day to help you taper off, that's amazing.
He would even pick up my son from school, drop him off, make him lunch or breakfast, because I was so not functional. I couldn't get out of bed. I mean, this was 4 or 5 years later. And I still was just moping, I don't want to say moping like a poor me, but it almost felt like that after so long. You know what I mean?
It's like you were just on autopilot and you weren't really living. You were just kind of there.
I mean, not to me did it feel like a poor me, but I feel like the people around me felt like, okay, she needs to snap out of this, right? I just couldn't. I could not do it. And so... where was I? So he
helped you taper off.
He started helping me taper every day, and we did an at-home taper, and it took 2 years. 2 years.
Did it?
And
that's commitment.
Yeah, it was rough though. It was rough. It was very just rocky between Justin and I. I hated him. I loved him. I hated him. I loved him. He was a good. I don't know. It was rough. And I thought for a long time, I can't do this. I'm not going to make it into recovery or anything like that. Well, we ended up falling in love with each other throughout these 2 years. And we moved into a home together. And in 2018, I found out I was pregnant again. I know. And my son, he was, how old was he at this time? I don't know. He was 6. Yeah, 6.
John Jr., 6 years old.
Yes. So 6 years old. And I was like, oh my gosh, do I want my kids this far apart? All this stuff. But I was like, no, it'll be perfect. And so when I found out I was pregnant, I was on such a low dose of Xanax that I was able to just stop it completely. And ever since then, I've been in recovery, but I've been healing, myself throughout these years. I didn't realize, I think in 2018, when I got off the Xanax, that I was entering recovery. It just kind of happened. It wasn't like okay, this is my sober date and I'm stopping now. I just stopped for my pregnancy, and then everything just kind of fell into place, right? Well, for the first about 3 years after I gave birth, I was doing a lot of inner healing. I stayed at home a lot. I didn't get my hair done, and I'm a girl that likes to get her hair done, stuff like that. I didn't leave the house for nothing. I stayed in the house with my family and my new baby for about 3 years, and things were going good in my life. I was starting to feel happy, and I was with the people I love. Well, by this time, my dad was going through some health issues, and he didn't really know what was going on, but he had a walker. He would fall a lot. He was really weak. We didn't have any answers, and he wasn't getting answers in Florida. So he went to Houston and found some doctors there to give him answers, and he was diagnosed with ALS.
Oh no,
Lou Gehrig's disease.
Okay. Right before you said that, I was thinking ALS, and then you said it when you said my best friend growing up, her dad died of ALS, and what you had started describing kind of is what happened to him, and couldn't find a doctor to tell him right away.
Right. He couldn't. My dad couldn't find anybody, and it caused a lot of strain on not only my mom and dad's relationship. They've been married over 40 years, and so it caused a lot of strain on their relationship. Plus, on top of that, they were dealing with me still in my addiction. This was whenever I was tapering. My dad was falling and stuff. This was all happening all together. So anyways, he was in Texas at this time. I was 3 years into recovery. He was in Texas because of his ALS diagnosis, and he had a caregiver there. And my brother calls me one day and says, Natalee, don't freak out, okay? He goes, don't freak out.
Don't freak
He
out.
goes, but you might need to sit down. And I'm like, God, just
Yeah,
tell
like,
me.
what the fuck?
You know, I'm like, fuck.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, Dad shot himself in the head. And I was like, what? You know? And I started crying. And he goes, but he's alive. He's alive. He survived. And he kept saying that over and over. He's alive, Natalee. He's alive, right? And I
Oh
was
my,
like,
oh
my
my
God.
God.
You know, I just immediately, I thanked God is the first thing I did. And then we made plans to go see my dad. So this was in 2020 where it was COVID time. So I had to see my dad through FaceTime the whole time. Well, we flew to Texas and everything, but we couldn't go see him. He lost his right eyeball. So he had like his eye missing. He had like this whole side of his face caved in. Ugh, it was a nasty looking injury. But
Did I want to ask you a morbid question?
no, go ahead.
Only because I've cared for a lot of people who have done that.
Mm-hmm.
Did he put that in his mouth and then
Nope.
did he put it right up to his face?
I think it was right here.
Oh,
So what so it hit him through here, it took his eye, and it like came out here.
oh
I don't
my
know.
gosh.
It was weird. It didn't touch his brain at all, though.
Really?
Yeah.
That's like a miracle of God.
That was weird, right? I thought that was so weird. Like
Whoa.
So this is what happened. So the caregiver was in the other room, and what I think happened is my dad he's like I said, he struggles with depression and stuff like that too. I think he was crying and kind of holding it like this, and like thinking of doing it but not doing it.
Wasn't gonna. Yes.
And I think he just pulled it, and it like took his eye and went out the forehead, and then he was still conscious the whole time.
He was still awake.
Yes. So the caregiver comes out after she hears the gunshot. The caregiver comes out, and she looks at him, and she says, "My dad just looks up at her. His eyeball is hanging down on his cheek here. Yeah. His eyeball's hanging down on his cheek here, and he just shrugs his shoulders like this, like that." And she calls 911.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And then my brother and my mom and I fly to Texas to see him. You know what my brother says to him the first time that we see him? He goes, "Dad, I'm pretty disappointed in you. I thought you were a better shot than that."
Oh my God.
My dad, though, if you knew my dad was cracking up.
Your dad.
Like, my
You
dad
know
was
what?
like, "Oh, you got me there."
Yeah,
You know?
like, son.
You got me there.
He can't. As a father, you can't be mad at your son because you raised him that way with that. Like going through so much trauma. The jobs that they have, it's like being a funeral director. And I probably would have cracked a joke at my own dad if that was my dad. Like just because the tension is so great in that room.
No, right?
I thought you were a better shot than that.
That's what he says. He told him, "I'm disappointed, Dad. I thought you were a
gosh.
better shot than that." My dad, it was so funny though. Like my family though, we tease each other a lot.
Yes.
We poke fun a lot. Like maybe too much.
Maybe
stuff
a
that
little
we
too much.
Maybe stuff we shouldn't poke fun at. But
Oh my gosh. Okay, so is your dad still around?
he's not.
No.
Unfortunately, I know he was so funny and he was a lot of fun. He was like a good guy. But
So by the time he got that diagnosis, I mean, because really, COVID really wasn't that long ago.
right, it wasn't. I know. So he got that diagnosis. So it was about 3 years into his diagnosis is when he shot himself. And they gave him 5 years with his ALS diagnosis. So he shot himself 3 years into it. After that happened, immediately we moved him back to Florida into my home. My home was the best place for him at the time. We put a hospital bed up there for him right in my living room. He had a little bell he could ding for his diaper or whatever he needed.
Do you still hear that sometimes?
I do. Sometimes I do. I'm sure Justin does too.
Justin's over there
helped me.
laughing like, yes.
Justin helped me so much with my dad. Because my mom and I couldn't carry him to the bathtub or the toilet. Justin had to do that, And just, I don't know. Justin helped wipe him, everything. Shave him. Justin's the best.
So for those who don't know what ALS is essentially a disease that
it paralyzes you. It's like your muscles, it's like you're in quicksand. Your mind is all there, but you can't move any of your limbs or anything. You can't even swallow. Like my dad had a feeding tube in his stomach because the muscles are so weak. So yeah, it's a devastating diagnosis and disease. I feel for anybody that has that.
It reminds me of dementia, but with dementia, they're not all there. I almost wonder if it's knowing. I feel like I know your dad. Like you've already been knowing him. I feel like maybe he was glad he was still with it all the way through the end, because I don't think he would have liked not being with it or being forgetful.
So he would have really suffered.
You're still able to crack jokes even if you just had to write them down, maybe.
Yep. Like even so, when I moved him into my home, my dad was so funny. He was in a wheelchair and everything, and I would give him his meds through his feeding tube. But in Florida, cannabis, medical marijuana is legal, so that helped my dad a lot. And we would, oh my gosh, he would hit the bong, and we'd have to help him hit the bong, and he'd had one eye. He's all crippled over.
We'd have to help him. Did he have a pirate patch on?
He hated that pirate patch on. He didn't like it. He said it was uncomfortable.
It's like a pirate.
And I'm like, Dad, you really can't see out of this side. I would like hold my finger over here. I'm like, Dad, he's like, I can't see that.
So you had some really good times
we had
together.
a great time. We had our last Christmas, like all 5 of us together. It was or not 5, 4, sorry. 4 of us, like thinking of my sister. That was in 2007 was our last Christmas of all 5 of us. But all 4 of us was 2020. And then my dad passed in February of 21. So they put him on hospice, and he passed up in Tampa at the VA in Tampa there. My brother, again, he leaves, he visits my dad in hospice, and he walks out now. Dad, don't go dying on me now, you hear?
Oh, gosh.
I'm like, Nathan, why do you have to make a joke out of everything? He goes, I can't help it. He goes, when I feel uncomfortable, I just make jokes.
He has to make a joke.
But my dad, he's in hospice, and he's just like, oh, seriously. I know. So, but, it was hard. So I was always scared something like that was going to happen and bring me back into
back to addiction,
where I was, and my depression, my addiction, everything like that. And I really think I did so much work on myself. Like I'm still doing work. I mean, recovery is an everyday process, of course, because any day you can go back.
I'm nodding my head like I know. I don't know. And I appreciate, but I really am. I'm glad that you're here talking about it.
Yeah.
Because not enough people do.
I try, I just want people to know that if you're in a season of life where you're going through grief or depression or addiction, there is a way out of it. And it doesn't have to be forever. It does not have to be. I mean, life has ups and downs. Everybody in the world has trials and tribulations. Everybody has a story to tell. You just depends if you're brave enough to share it and help other people, or if you are not even brave enough, even if you just feel like sharing it to help other people, you can do that. And not everybody likes to talk about their traumas and stuff, but like for me, I feel like it's been really healing.
When you were going through it, were you scared to get sober?
Absolutely. I was
Is that
terrified.
a scary thing because you're so used to that's your everyday norm?
Yes.
And to think you get so dependent on it, I'm assuming, and to then not have it because that's like your make you feel nothing but make you feel happy pill, and then you got to get rid of it.
Yeah, it was really scary. And also you have to remember, like, you worked so hard to get that high, to get that next fix. And in recovery, you have to work just as hard, but for your happiness. And the drug is tangible, but your happiness is, it's a feeling that comes and goes,
Yeah.
And so it's kind of hard to fight so hard for something that comes and that isn't tangible and it comes and goes. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that feeling. So yeah, it was scary. I was really scared because I had to put in that work to heal. And you have to sit with that pain. You have to, with the drugs, it numbs it, But when you don't have the drugs to heal, you have to sit and feel that grief and feel that pain and accept it. I mean, I know that sounds cliche, but
And go through it.
that's what you have to do in order to heal.
I feel like with your dad's death, that was a lot different than your sister and then your husband. And you had that really precious time together with those memories and those jokes.
Oh my gosh, I know. I know.
I'm really glad that you had that time with your dad and that he got to live with you. I bet he loved, or I think that he liked that too.
I thank God every day for that, because if I wasn't in recovery and sober at that time in my life, I wouldn't have been able to. And if I did end up get sober in the future and I wasn't during my dad's,
Oh, I'm so glad you were sober.
I would have never forgave myself ever. First of all, I wouldn't probably remember a lot of it. And then on top of it, I'd be like, well, I couldn't get sober and show my dad that I could do it,
Yeah.
But
What was your dad's funeral like?
small. It was small and military funeral.
Is that his picture that you with the casket, that really pretty wooden casket?
Yes.
Is that
yes,
his? Yeah.
that one's my dad's. So, or wait, maybe it was John's. John has a wooden one too. Dad might have had a gray one. I can't remember. But it was small. It was a small funeral. And since my sister's casket, open casket, we decided to have closed caskets for John and my dad, because the open casket for me and my family, it was very difficult to see that. I don't know why. I mean, I saw my sister right away in the body bag. I saw John. I saw my dad right away. But it was just something about the open casket that it made it hard for me. Some people.
You did get to see John?
I did.
Yeah.
In the hospital.
In the hospital. I have had families, and honestly, it's kind of like back and forth. They'll come to the hospital and they'll get to say goodbye at the hospital, and then they'll come and they'll see him in the casket and they'll say, I kind of wish I would have just said goodbye at the hospital and had that been. But then sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes we get to embalm, but usually that's for people if they're like over 75, 80 years old, and maybe they were really frail, and then with embalming, it helps fill things out again, and they're like, wow, they look 20 years younger. I think it's different for age groups and for different people. Yeah. But I didn't ask if you got to see John one more time.
I did. I got to see him. I didn't know if I should or not. It's a hard decision.
I'm glad you did.
I did too. I am too. I just knew I didn't want to see him in an open casket at days later. I knew I didn't want that.
And again, with funerals, you're kind of at the mercy of
right.
the military too.
Yes.
Right. So your dad's funeral happens, and then nobody else has. Have you gone through any other? Oh, thank God.
No,
thank goodness. Okay.
I know. I'm like, I feel like I'm waiting. Like I'm on edge.
No, don't wait.
Like, look at my life though. So
We're
far,
done.
I'm like,
dear God,
it's been too many years. Okay, how many years has it been? I'm like, it's been too many years that things are going good. Something's gonna crash and burn. I can just feel it. Like that's what I feel like though. Like I feel like every so few years, I don't know. I mean, I'm praying that it doesn't, but my life is a lot different than it was then. Like I talk to God a lot more. I didn't really have a relationship with God until I started feeling this grief and people I loved dying. And I wanted to know about death more. It made me very interested in death. I think
that's probably why I popped up on your feed.
Yeah, it is. It is. I'm just so in awe of it because I do believe there's something after this.
I do too.
I believe 100%. There's got to be.
So have you had any spiritual things happen to you?
So
I need to know them.
So I'm not like, I don't feel like I'm a very spiritual person. And my dad, he didn't believe in that stuff. And I asked him about if he believes in that stuff. And so he would tell me no growing up. So I always thought maybe it wasn't real, right? Well, I beg to differ now that I'm older. I still don't really have spiritual happenings, but a few weird premonitions happened before my sister's death and my husband's death that still freak me out to this day.
Tell me.
So my sister, before she died, she used to like tell me the song that she wanted played at her funeral and stuff, which I always thought that was really weird because we were so young.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I never even thought of that. Like that never even still to this day. I'm like, I don't care what song they play,
Yeah.
but she picked out a song for her funeral. And then, she always told me that she felt like she wasn't supposed to age, like she was supposed to die at a young age. And she can't picture herself aging, is what she would tell me. Isn't that weird?
That is weird. And this is actually now day 2 in a row that I've had somebody else tell me that. A girl I went to high school with, she told her parents that she was going to die young. And she did die young.
Really?
Same thing, like premonition-y like that.
See, back then, just a coincidence, But now,
What was the song?
It's what?
What was the song?
Oh, Lightning Crashes.
Lightning Crashes.
Do you
By
know
who?
that song? Who's it by, Justin? Look it up for us. So Lightning Crashes. You have to listen to it. It's a pretty song. But it makes me cry every time I hear it, So then, before my husband's death, this was like the biggest premonition I ever had. But I still couldn't put it together because I didn't believe in that stuff. Like if I had something like this happen today, I would be like, what? Okay, I got to do something. Right?
Yep.
Months before my husband's death, months leading up to his death, I would wake up at least 2-3 times a week with nightmares of him leaving me, not in my dream, not in a way where he's leaving me for another woman. It was like a feeling where I could feel it in my chest, like that initial shock of grief. I could feel that in my dream. But when I would wake up, I would wake him up and be like, John, oh my God, I just had a horrible dream that, you weren't with me anymore. Like you never existed, I would say. I was like, I don't know how to explain it. He goes, I'm never going to leave you. And I'm like, not like that though. I was like, this is so different in my dream and it was scary. And then, we would cuddle and fall back asleep. But this would happen multiple times a week.
Wow.
For months leading up to his death. And I don't know if it was like trying to prepare me for that pain and that grief. I don't know I don't know. But it was so intense, like
Premonition.
real.
It was.
I could really feel it too.
That is wild.
Wild. It was wild. Live. Lightning. What? Live? Yeah. Lightning Crashes by Live.
I will listen. I have to write it down.
Yeah,
I'm
you
writing it
gotta
down. I'll
listen
listen
to
to it
that
on my
song.
way home.
And if you can't understand the words, you got to look at the lyrics, okay? Because it's really good.
And any other signs or anything? You should. Okay, you have to read this book called Signs.
Okay.
My mom. It's about how if you're open to it, certain signs, they'll give you signs.
I'm going to have to read that because I don't know what to look for. Like I look for signs now today because like today, like I view like, like I said, I feel like there's something after this 100%. I do. I mean, it has to be so selfish to think that we're the only, like it ends here.
It does. Yeah, it can't.
You can't. We're not, there's something way bigger than us. And, I look at life as like I said this before on TikTok too, on my live, but, I look at it as like a school for your soul, and they actually say that it is like a school for your soul. And it's probably one of the hardest schools that you will ever go through in life,
Yep.
in your internal life, I guess you should say. So I don't know. It's just, I don't know.
I don't look forward to. I'll have people. They'll come in my lives and they'll be like, "Why are you not afraid to die?" And it's like they know that I'm not. And it's not that I'm not afraid for what comes after. I'm not looking forward to dying, but I mean, I look forward to the after because I think that it is. We can't just die and there be nothing. There can't. We're too. we're all too connected, like with the world and how people know everybody and how you put something out. I know how we say put things out to the universe, but you really do put things out there, and sometimes they come back.
Absolutely.
Manifestation, and for everybody to experience these similar things, or that's why I really like reading ghost stories that people send me, because so many people are having similar experiences that you can't just shy away from it.
Exactly.
It can't be that. I don't believe in coincidences.
I don't anymore. Not
No.
anymore.
I don't believe that everything happens for a reason. That was like when I lost someone that I loved very much, and somebody looked at me like, well, everything happens for a reason. And I looked at him like, no, the fuck it doesn't. You want to tell me that? No. So what was the reason? Like Cardi B, what was the reason? There was no reason. He should still be here, right here. Like, he should be off, married, and have a couple kids. Like there was no reason. So that can be a really hurtful thing to say. Don't ever say that to somebody at a funeral, by the way, because
It would hurt.
it would hurt. But I think that everything might not always happen for a reason, but I do believe in maybe, I hate to say the word fate, but where your sister said that she didn't picture herself aging, or she didn't picture herself growing old, and she was telling you her funeral song, maybe she was having premonition dreams too, or these feelings, and so somehow everything is connected.
Right. I believe that 100% now. I mean, you told me this before, and it's so strange. I didn't start believing this until I went through these deaths. Like, I think my husband's death is what really changed my mind on the afterlife and death. And I'm like you, I wouldn't say I'm afraid of death. Maybe I'm afraid of how I'm going to die.
Yeah, I'm not looking forward to the process.
Yeah.
Like, whatever it's going to be, a million ways to die, I'm not looking forward to it.
I read something today that scientists found, like after death, there's brain activity, and it releases I don't know, it's crazy.
Yeah.
I don't know. It releases all this stuff.
Trend on TikTok that for 6 minutes after death, your brain still does stuff. Not processes. The electrons still fire. Like your brain is still going through the motions. And I thought that was really interesting too.
Yes, I read that, and I was like, wow. It's so fascinating. Death is such an essential part of life. It's essential. Everybody does it.
And it's funny, we can talk about it, we can attempt to normalize it all the time, but no matter how much we talk about it, whenever it happens to somebody you love and somebody you know, it is always still such a shock. It's such a, wow, I thought this was something that was going to happen to everybody else, and then it happens to you, and it's just like,
gosh, I know.
And you have been through that so much. And you're so young, and has anyone ever told you that you look like a better looking version of Jennifer Aniston?
People have told me I look, no, not that exactly, but thank you, Laura.
You're hotter than her.
Not exactly that, but they have said Jennifer Aniston, I've heard that, who's the actress that plays It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. I hear that one a lot. The
That's
blonde
so
lady
funny.
in that. I don't watch it, but yeah. So, and speaking of that, everybody dies. When I first, at 18, when my sister passed, I remember that thought in my head. I remember driving, we lived in Houston at the time, so we were driving down 45 in Houston, and, the freeway was packed with cars, and my sister had just passed away. And I remember looking, at the traffic backed up, thinking, God, that's a lot of people. And then I thought, all of them are going to die one day. Every single person. Every single person. And it was just, in my brain at that time, it really sunk in, and
we get so caught up in our daily life, our everyday 8 to 5, or we might get really caught up on some sort of, I don't know, maybe the other shoe drops and you get fired at work, and you get so caught up on that and so bummed out about it. And in retrospect, maybe you get fired for a different reason, and there's just a different path you're supposed to take. But we take those things to heart sometimes when things go wrong or they don't go quite right. And sometimes just taking a step back, That's why I really started to get into meditating. I don't know if you do
Gosh,
that.
that's what I do.
love
I do
meditating.
it every single night,
Oh
every
my
day.
God. He's smiling over there like, yes, she does.
I meditate every single day for the past, how many years? I've been doing it every day for the past 4 years.
I love
It's
listening.
changed everything, Lauren.
the,
Everything.
the way that your mind works, how you think, how you tell yourself, loving yourself is so important. Putting out those good feelings, those good vibes, and it's sometimes just so important to take a step back and think like your life is so short. We are all going to die one day. As morbid as that may sound, it's just normal. It's a normal part of life.
We got to talk about it.
We have to talk about it. We have to normalize it. I think we just get so caught up in our everyday lives, we sometimes forget that.
Absolutely.
Was that job really that important? Maybe you needed it, but maybe it opened it up for a different opportunity for you. Or I was totally late coming to this podcast today, and I read about the burnt toast theory the other day. The thought that if you burn your toast in the morning and it made you late and you had to remake your toast a few minutes later, and so you're 5-10 minutes late, maybe that 5-10 minutes you were late was meant to happen because maybe you were going to get into a crash on the way here. Who knows?
I think that too. And my favorite like quote or saying is, if it's not going to matter in 5 years, don't spend more than 5 minutes on it. I say that all the time to him, to Justin, to everybody, especially if you're arguing about something so petty. I always bring up that quote. I'm like, seriously, is it going to matter in 5 years?
So in closing, if there's somebody listening to this and they are going through addiction, what are some things that you would want them to take away from this podcast?
Absolutely. I would want them to ask for help. If
Ask
they're
for help.
struggling in addiction, even if you're on the verge of like, I don't know if I have an addiction or I do have an addiction, right? You're in the middle. Ask for help, because if you're thinking that maybe you have an addiction, you probably do. Always ask for help. Reach out to me. You can reach out to me. I do outreach support for addiction.
Tell them where to find you at.
You can find me on TikTok at not Natalee King. You can find me on Instagram, which is just Natalee King, or Facebook, Natalee King. And I do outreach support for addiction, mental health. I can help find you treatment, your loved ones a treatment. We have sober companionship, sober transport, anything that you may need to help with addiction. Reach out to me. I'll be happy to help. So
I love that a lot. I love that you do that. Yeah. And yes, you should definitely go follow Natalee. I love watching her lives. Sometimes she'll get some haters in there.
Oh, I do. Oh,
and I was messaging her one time. Somebody said, "Oh my gosh, what a pity party in here." And I was so mad. I was ready to throw hands. I'm like, how dare you? And then Natalie's like, block. And then I sent her a message. I'm like, you should put welcome to the pity party on your TikTok profile.
And I loved it immediately. I was like, why didn't I think of this sooner? Lauren's a genius. Oh my gosh. So I put it on my TikTok. Welcome to my pity party.
Welcome to the pity party. Like, it was so mean. Like, he never should have put that. But at the end of the day, it's like, you know what? We're just going to put and let it go.
I know. I tell people all the time, like, if I tell people my story, or like, because it feels like every time I talk to people about my story, like it always brings up a death somehow, some way, at least one, right?
At least one, yeah.
And people are always like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, and I'm like, oh, I also lost this person or whatever. I'm like, I'm a whole lot of fun at parties, invite me.
You've lived
like,
so
oh,
much. Gosh. You've lived so much life. So, sometimes when you meet people and they just feel like a really old soul, I feel like that's you.
You're so
or like I've already known you somehow in some other life. Is that weird
know.
sometimes? Or like how you're connected to people?
Too.
Okay.
I feel it too, though.
Well, I could in that I could talk to you all night. So you guys should definitely go follow Natalee. I want to thank you so much for coming to see me and telling me your story. I think it's a really powerful one, and you should definitely write a book.
Thank you so much, Lauren. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, guys, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.